I want to get Bob Chapman's take on the IMF selling off all this gold. What do you think that's about, Bob?
Well, first of all, did you say that they said that they already sold 35 tons?
I believe that was the headline was 400, but when you read into the article, I'll bring it up. I'll have my guys print it. But I think they've already said they've sold 35 tons, yeah.
It's news to me. But anyway, 400 tons. Let's back up a step here. First of all, every year, the European individual banks, under the old Washington Agreement, they have a 5-year agreement, and it's up this coming fall, and all indications are that they're going to renew it. And each country gets a allotment to sell gold, and the maximum is 500 tons. Now, they were selling 450 the year before last. Last year it dropped down to something like 390. In other words, governments weren't participating as much as they could within the program. This year they have probably sold, and I don't know the exact figure, but I'll guess at probably 50 tons, not very much. And that gold that was supposed to come to market or was available to come to market through central banks in Italy, France, Sweden, whatever, that will not be in existence if the IMF sells gold. Now, the reason IMF is selling gold is, yes, to raise funds, and number two, to suppress the price. But it's not going to be very suppressive because it's just going to supplant the sale by the European banks that would be normally coming to market as prices in gold rose and they wanted to get what they call more liquidity. Second of all, it would be, if it had to be, phased in over a period of time and maybe 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, which would not really affect the market at all. And then there's a proviso that if they can sell it off market, they will do so. And I suppose the Rothschilds will be standing there rubbing their hands just like they were when England was selling at $275 and they were buying it up hand over fist. And that's a fact that they were the buyers for the most part.
Yeah, so they're further consolidating their gold, right? It has to be
approved. Pardon me?
I said this is a further consolidation of all this, all these precious metals for these people, correct?
Right, and further, the United States Congress has to approve it. Mm-hmm. And whether they will or not remains to be seen. Historically, they have not wanted to. And so the price of gold is hanging around $900 an ounce today. It came down $25 or $30 an ounce because of the announcement that they wanted to sell at 403 tons of gold, and they might want to sell more. But you've heard my explanation, so it's not really going to affect the market that much. And when they sold gold back in the 70s, gold came off about $20 an ounce. And after the sale was over, it went berserk.
Well, this article is telling me it's 403 tons of gold, but that the European Central Bank said Wednesday it had already completed the sale of 35.5 tons of gold. It's Bob Chapman, the internationalforecaster.com. It's the Alex Jones Show, PrisonPlanet.tv, Infowars.com. Back after this. Folks, we are back. It's the Alex Jones Show. We are joined by Bob Chapman of the internationalforecaster.com. Bob, how can they get your information?
Well, that's pretty simple. They can go to theinternationalforecaster.com to get a free copy, or they can call 877-479-8178. That's toll free, 877-479-8178. And A free copy will come either by email or hard copy.
All right, I want to, aside from that gold story, there are so many headlines out today and in the past couple of days about G20 shapes new world order with lesser role for U.S. and markets. That's a Bloomberg headline. I mean, they're coming out right here and saying global leaders took their biggest steps yet towards a new world order that's less U.S.-centric, with more heavily regulated financial industry and a greater role for the international institutions and quote-unquote emerging markets. So this is all pro-globalization. This means less for us. I mean, when Obama said that we were going to have to sacrifice, he wasn't kidding.
Well, you're right, and this has been in the works for some time, about 20 years, as far as financial regulation is concerned. And what they want to do is bring all of the regulation for banks, any kind of lenders, brokerage firms, private equity firms, insurance companies, etc. And they want to bring them under one set of rules. And those rules will be promulgated and run from perhaps Brussels or Frankfurt or wherever they're going to run them from. But it'll be Eurocentric, so to speak. And they want to run everything in the world financially. And what they're eventually looking for in the final analysis as far as currency is concerned is a world currency which is digital with gold backing, supposedly. And this currency, because of the nature of it being digital, will mean that every government and this central database, if you want to call it that, will know how much money you have or how much units you have, or how many units you have, I should say, and they'll know exactly what's going on in your financial life. And, of course, it'll go on from there. Next will be who's going to be able to go to university, who's going to be able to study what, who's going to be able to marry who's going to be able to breed, and on and on and on. I mean, this is really, really frightening. Nothing new to me, because, I've seen it for the past 50 years. But for the average person listening today, this has been a long time coming. This is their dream of world government, and we've got to stop them.
Yeah, even Anderson Cooper, when discussing what happened to the G20, made the comment that when Gordon Brown mentioned a new world order, this worried a lot of people in the United States because of the negative connotation the phrasing has with people like you and myself, because we know what the new world order is. I mean, it seems like this is their coming out party. There's headlines everywhere. We had the New World Order in time. We had Obama's New World Order in time just last year. They're openly talking about a carbon tax system. I mean, this is it. I mean, we even had Enion Davignon admit yesterday in the mainstream press that the euro was brought about from the Bilderberg Group in the 90s. And we know that the euro is a currency supported by the globalists.
Well, I lived in Europe during the 1950s and 60s, and this was bandied about when they had the European Common Market. Mm-hmm. So it goes back to the late 40s and the early 50s, and you could sit and read in any publication throughout Europe the plans for the European Economic Community, which eventually became the European Union. And they talked about the currency then. They didn't talk about world currency, but they talked about a borderless Europe and so on and so forth. And, of course, the excuse in those days was so that it could be defended against the demons from Russia, and also so that Germany could not rise again. These were the excuses in those days. And so, the game has changed somewhat. But that's where they're headed.
It's absolutely where they're headed. How can we what are the best proactive steps right now your average citizen can take to combating this? Because our movements have really been co-opted by people like Glenn Beck. For instance, Glenn Beck is going to be here in San Antonio with his 9/12 project on April 15th. And a lot of these people are well-meaning people. They're angry at the government. They don't know who to turn to. They're watching the mainstream media, so automatically they go to Glenn Beck. But Glenn Beck is about to have Popular Mechanics come on his show and debunk the FEMA camps. Glenn Beck isn't talking about the mandatory service in the GIVE Act. Glenn Beck isn't on TV screaming bloody murder about the G20 summit and the announcement of a new world order.
And Glenn Beck is a change agent.
Yeah, he certainly is.
And
so
all
what
the
can we
rest
do?
of them, the whole group are. And, you know, it's like 70%, 80% truth, and the rest of it's all propaganda. And they get away with it for the very reasons that you talk about. And what we have to do is get more stations, more reach, more people, and tell them the truth. Say, yeah, Glenn Beck, yeah, you know, here's the real truth. This is what he's leaving out.
Well, we're going to be going down there, and I'm going to be taking with me, the Army Regulation 210-35, the Civilian Inmate Labor Program, to show to everybody, making multiple copies. We're going to be handing out copies of the Obama deception. But really what angers me the most is that, you know, the Patriot movement, the 9/11 Truth movement, we really pioneered doing these tea parties in the last 10 or so years. You know what I mean? We're the ones who have been going out, protesting the IRS, protesting the 9/11 Commission, and now Glenn Beck is taking up the Tea Party.